books that predict the future is nothing new in our world. Actually, I find them very enjoyable to read and find out what the author get right, what the author get not right, and actually how the author see our world in some next years. One of this book is The Next 100 Years, a Forecast for the 21st Century by George Fridman. This book was published in 2009. So why did I choose this book? Because it's really interesting to see how right and how wrong Friedman was, and if his prediction past 2020 seem more or less likely or crazy obviously, Friedman is aware that this isn't some sort of prophecy. That he could easily be wrong, but he based his predictions off trends at the time, including ones he believed others would ignore. But I think that's important to know that Friedman spends a good portion of the book discussion what he believes is geopolitical strategies of the US and why the US is a superpower. But actually I don't want to focus only on that. If you want, you can read it by yourself, which I really recommend. So, why the US is a superpower according by Friedman? First of all, it's a geostrategic location because US is because US surrounded by the oceans, and only way to get to US it's only by plane or maybe ship. The other one is that US controls the world's ocean military and the world's oceans economic. What does it mean? It means that US got really strong and powerful ocean military and controlling the ocean by having this military power. So the United States strategic interest is based around keeping geostrategic domination of the Americans and keeping domination of the oceans and preventing a new Afro-Eurasian superpower. Then Friedman predicts are based on trends of the time. One of them is a rise in technology that show us that many technological trends of our time was pretended very long ago. Then he pretends the increase in LGBT rights, which actually improve in our days nowadays, because we have many families which are LGBT, and many people who are saying that they are the supporters of this decision. So, what does Friedman predict for 2020? First of all, he predicts that Russia will attempt to reasset itself as a power and try to bring back influence or domination over former Soviet territories. Actually, that's obviously told about Ukraine and how it's especially important for Russia. Because if Ukraine will be more like European countries, that's mean that Ukraine cannot be a friend for Russia. The second point that NATO will abandon Poland and the Baltic nations to avoid confrontation. Poland forms a loose alliance with Eastern European nation against Russia aggression in 2015. The third prediction is in 2010s will be a mini Cold War 2.0 between Russia and the US. And the fourth is Russia collapses around 2020, similar to the Soviets collapsing in 1991. Then Fridman predicts the future of Europe Union in 2020. First, his prediction that Europe Union will have a minor trouble with individual nationalist movements, and Germany will assert itself more. Then he predicts the wars in Middle East. First, his predictions that war on terror would die down. Jihadists no longer being a main focus of US foreign policy. And the second prediction is Turkey will emerge as the primary power of the Middle East. Then he predicts the future for China. First of his predictions that China's economy in the 2010s will slow down and stagnate. The second prediction is China will use xenophobia and national greatness to motivate its populace. The third of it, China won't take Taiwan. And the fourth, by 2020, China will begin to denationalize with coastal areas economically leaning towards Japan. And the last one country that he predicts future for 2020 is the United States. And the only one prediction for this year for US is dealing with economic problems as the baby boomer generation retires and dies off. So as we can see from our years, we can find out that six of his prediction wars was only on half is truly. And then on politics 6 statements we can find out that only 2 statements was true, and some other things that happened he only was true in 2 of them. What about wars? About wars, he truly predict Iraq war ending, Middle Eastern instability, and war in Ukraine. But what he not predict? He not predict the Arab Spring, war against ISIS, and in 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. In politics, he pretend Europe Union skepticism and Cold War with Russia, but he did not pretend the Brexit, the Trump, the Chinese authoritarianism, and North Korea antics. In some other things, he pretends the growth in LGBT expectance and increase in technology, but he do not pretend Chinese economic growth and pandemic. So his prediction for the past than 2020 is that Turkey will be a top 10 economic power, and the other countries create spheres of influence in China as it decentralizes. The third prediction that the US will deal with an economic crisis brought by retiring boomers and labor shortages. The fourth is that Korea unifies before 2030. The fifth prediction that Turkey expands political influences. US ignores it because it counters Iran. And the last one prediction is Chechnya and the other Islamic areas break away from Russia. Then he predicts that Finland will annex Karelia, Romania will enact Moldova, India will help Tibet to break free from China. The next predictions that for 2030s, the first of it, the country is complete for immigrants due to labor shortages. The second, the Polish-led alliance begins to assert itself more. US-Japanese relations begin to drift apart. US begins to see Turkey as a threat. US will commercialize space. And the last one, I think that already done in this 2022 year, or maybe in 21. So, as we can see, he did not pretend that's so truly. So his predictions for 2040s. US economy is similar to 1950s level. Korea is the US primary East Asia ally. Japan expands economically into India and Pacific Oceans. Indonesia deals with separatist movements. Slovenia and Croatia join Polish bloc. India and Poland grow closer to the US. Japan and Turkey grow closer to each other. Japan, Turkey and Poland are nuclear powers. Then he shows us a map where you can see the Turkey have many territory which he shows a map where the zones of influence of Turkey. So how you can see, Turkey will have so much power of influence on these countries. That's a really big power of this country. So then he predicts the countries use space military bases, and the US growth depend on them, and Japan and the US will have moon colonies. Then he predicts the World War III, which will begin in November 24th, 2050 at 5:30 p.m. The main countries that will fight with each other that will be US plus Polish bloc plus China plus other allies against Japan, Turkey and Germany. So he pretends that mostly missiles and robotic infantry will be in this war. As he wrote, the Poles and the Polish bloc will scream for Turkish blood, and will the Chinese and Koreans for that of the Japanese, but the US will pull a Woodrow Wilson at Versailles. In the name of all that is human, it will make certain that Eurasia remains chaotic. Then, in 2050s, he pretend post-war economic boom and Polish bloc solidifies into